A lot of players that I teach personally will say the following thing to me. They'll say, Nick, I always play really well when we're practicing, but then when I go onto the match court, I'll play completely different and I'm playing horrible. What can I do to fix this? Well, it's not so easy to fix this because this is what makes tennis so difficult. This is true even at the elite level. I don't know if you guys know, but Rafa is my favorite player and I can recommend his book very highly. There's one paragraph in this book that is fascinating that will explain what I'm talking about when it comes to playing better in practice versus matches. So take a listen. You might think that after the millions and millions of balls that I've hit, I've had the basic shots of tennis sewn up, that reliably hitting a true, smooth, clean shot every time would be a piece of cake. But it isn't. Not just because every day you wake up feeling differently, but because every shot is different, every single one. From the moment the ball is in motion, it comes to you in an infinite, I can't say this word, infinite. Okay, we're gonna skip this word, okay? You guys teach me how to pronounce it. Anyways, the ball comes to you at blank number of angles and speed with more topspin or backspin, flatter or higher. The differences might be minute, microscopic, but so are the variations your body makes: shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, ankles, knees in every shot. And there are so many other factors: the weather, the surface, the rival. No ball arrives the same as another. No shot is identical. So every time you line up to hit a shot, you have to make a split-second judgment as to the trajectory and speed of the ball, and then make a split-second decision as to how hard and where you must try to hit the shot back. So guys, this is a fascinating thing that Rafa wrote, and even though this is more applying to the elite level, we can apply this to the recreational level as well, because here's what's going to happen. Let's say you take a lesson with me, and now you're going to get used to the type of ball that I'm giving you. Even though I'm going to try to mix it up, I'm going to do all kinds of different spins, and I'm going to do my best to give you the most variation possible. But it doesn't matter, because once you step onto that match court, whoever you're playing against is going to give you a completely different look. Another scenario could be that when you're playing a tournament, you have one match where you're playing absolutely amazing, and then in the next round, all of a sudden you're playing horribly. And the reason is because every time you face somebody different, the ball is going to come at you differently. You're going to have to make adjustments, and this is what makes tennis so difficult. And a lot of players get so frustrated by this that they even think about quitting tennis because they just can't replicate their game in practice onto the match court. But guys, what you have to do is just to accept that this is the reality of tennis. Playing competitive tennis is not easy. It's unbelievably difficult at the high level, but it's also very difficult at the recreational level, because think about it this way: at the recreational level, often players that you're playing against do not possess proper technique, so their strokes are even more unpredictable than at the high level. So what can you do to start playing your practice game in a real match situation? Now, one thing that I want you to do right away is stop worrying about your opponent, because you can't control how your opponent is going to play anyway. And too many players, they psych themselves out even before the match. I hear all the time, oh, I have to play this dinker, I have to play this guy who slices everything, I have to play this guy who's so annoying, he moonballs everything. So even before the match, these players are psyching themselves out, they're putting negative thoughts in their head, and they're most likely going to lose as a result of that. And the way I approach whether you should think about your opponent or not depends on the level of your game. So if you happen to have automatic strokes, in other words, all your technique is correct and you don't have to think about your technique, you possess all the shots, you know how to slice, you know how to volley, you have a good second serve, then maybe you can start thinking a little bit about your opponent and you can apply certain tactics. However, if there's holes in your game, if your technique is incomplete, there's absolutely unnecessary to think about what's going on the other side of the net. You have to focus on what's going on your side of the net. So if your technique is not developed yet, you're taking it one step too far. It makes zero sense to think about your opponent, and many players spend too much time applying certain tactics and they're looking at their opponent and they're completely forgetting about working on their own game. There's too much work to be done on your own side of the course. So therefore, do not worry about your opponent, worry about yourself. Now, one thing players do very rarely is properly warm up before a match. So they're going into a match cold, and on top of that, and they might be a little bit nervous and anxious, and now it's very tough in the beginning of the match, and the first set is probably going to go your opponent's way. So what can you do to prevent that? You have to properly warm up like the professional players do. And what is the absolute best way to warm up for tennis? It's actually playing tennis. Ever been to a pro tournament? You see how Federer and all these other guys are hitting balls before their matches? They're doing this because this is the absolute best way to get into a rhythm and to warm your body up the perfect way for a tennis match. So my recommendation is that before you play a match, you hit 10 minutes on the ball machine or you hit 10 minutes on the wall, and you're going to do a lot better in the beginning of your match. It's up. I'm going to receive. Are you guys surprised by that? I love to receive first. You know why? Because I'm going to use that first game to get into a rhythm. See, if my opponent is serving, I have less to lose, and now I can use this first game to warm up. Because even though I'm properly warmed up prior to the match, I'm still going to have a lot of nerves in the beginning of the match. And by receiving first, I'm going to give myself that buffer, that extra game to loosen some of the nerves and additionally get into a groove in the match. Also, the way you should play the first couple of games in a match is try to extend the rallies. This is going to be great for the same reasons as I mentioned before. You're going to loosen up some of that anxiety, and also you're going to get into a great rhythm, and you're going to be able to warm up more. So it's super important that you try to have long rallies in the very beginning of the match. And guys, another thing that I see way too much at the recreational level is that players obsess with tactics. And you have to realize that at the elite level, the tactics that a player is using, they're very general. And tennis is not like a chess match. It's a very intuitive game. Players are not at all thinking about technique, and they're employing very simple and very general tactics. And what do I mean by that? But simple tactics, for example, are you're going to tell yourself that you're going to be more offensive, or maybe you're going to be a little bit more defensive. Those are simple tactics. But what recreational players often do, they treat the tennis court like a chessboard, and they're thinking about all these different type of tactics. And you have to realize that at the recreational level, players do not have automatic strokes, so there's a lot of mistakes in their technique, and players can't execute the tactics that they're trying to employ anyways. So this is a big waste of time, and it's actually going to clutter your brain, and you're not going to feel good on the court, and you're going to play worse. Keep things simple and realize that even at the elite level, tactics are very simple and general in nature. And lastly, and most importantly, the reason why you're not playing in a match like you are in practice is because you probably haven't worked hard enough. And I hate to say it, guys, the muscle memory that needs to be developed in order for the strokes to be accessible for you in a match, this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of repetitions. You can't just work on a certain technique on your strokes for a couple of weeks and then expect that this technique is going to be there for you in a match. So guys, let me explain to you how this works. And I've done it with so many students. I know that this is the case. So you have to repeat the certain technique that you're learning tens of thousands of times in a practice situation. And then you have the chance that this particular thing that you're doing is going to become automated. And then when you play a match without thinking about it at all, it will be there for you. So let's say you're working on something technical on your forehand. Could you do this in a match? Absolutely not, because what's going to happen in a match is that you want to win. And what that means that maybe even at a subconscious level, you're going to be using the game that's going to give you the best chances to win that match. So in other words, this new thing that you're working on the forehand is not automated yet. And you know that if you try to use this, it's not going to work. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to go back to what feels comfortable, what gives you the most chances to get that ball into the court, and therefore give you the chance to win the point or the match. So to put it simply, the only way you can play more like you do on a practice court in a real match situation is to practice more. You need to repeat these strokes tens of thousands of times in a non-match situation, in a practice session with no pressure, where you're only thinking about technique. And when you do that, you have a good chance that the stroke becomes automated and is accessible for you in a real match situation. So what I'm telling you guys is that you shouldn't try to work on your technique in a match, and maybe even if you're developing something new, if you're working on your strokes, put matches aside for a while, because often what happens, and this is true even at the junior level, let's say you're working on something technical on your game, and then you go out and play a bunch of matches. You might actually get worse because, like I said, you're probably not going to think about technique in your match, and you're only going to further ingrain the old muscle memory. So if you're working on something new, it might be good to lay off of matches for a while and just get those reps in, so that eventually this new thing that you learn is going to be automated and will be there for you in a real match situation. Infinite, I don't know what this word, I guarantee you Rafa, his English is obviously worse than mine. He doesn't know what this word is. I don't think he wrote this book, or at least he wrote it in Spanish and then someone translated it, or maybe they helped him out with a couple of words here and there. Let me try it again. Infinitesimal. Oh, I think I know it. Okay, I got confused. Infinitesimal. Infinitesimal, is that it? Infinitesimal, yes. Okay, I got it. Infinitesimal. Still a great book too. I highly recommend it. This is the best player in the history of the game. No, I'm just kidding. It's the big three. They're all the same. But I love this guy the most.